Ironically enough, I used to project my insecurities onto my ex.
Welcome back to HIVEMIND Unlimited. That was good.
You like that one?
I do.
Okay.
I liked it better in the movie.
Welcome to the third episode of
How Did It Age?
Where we rewatch older movies and reevaluate them with new context.
Correct.
And for this one, we watched Project X. Came out in 2012. It's the party movie everybody knows.
It's the big one.
The big party movie.
It's not a comedy.
It can be. It sort of is.
Yeah, it's weird.
Tell us about it.
This movie's directed by Nima Nourizadeh, who was, up until this point, primarily a music video director.
Yes.
That's apparent if you watch the movie. It comes from the production house of Joel Silver and Todd Phillips. Todd Phillips has done a remarkable amount of stuff, and so has Silver Productions, Lethal Weapon, and I could list 30 other movies he's been a part of. Kind of an odd pairing there on the production side for this project. This is just an odd movie in general. I think the context here that really helps make it make sense is that it is 2012. And in this era, we got a ton of kind of just feel good party. It was the end of the world.
They wanted high schoolers to feel like they could be as like raunchy and crazy as possible.
Yeah, and it felt like it was a really acceptable time to make a movie like this for whatever reason.
And I think good context for this movie is like they got the music video director and they got no-name actors for the reason that they wanted it to feel attainable.
Yeah.
They wanted it to feel like these are people that you know, or even you,
Yeah.
throwing a party. That's why it's also filmed by Dax Flame.
Yep.
Most of the movie is filmed by YouTuber Dax Flame. And tons of found footage, a.k.a. cell phones they passed out on set, captures a lot of this movie.
An open casting call was put out to everyone in the United States over the age of 18, which is pretty cool. And they encouraged, people with no experience to send in their casting.
Yeah, audition for this movie.
Yeah.
And also they partied for 25 days straight. And a lot of the scenes that appear in this movie, specifically the montage stuff, was not planned by the directors.
Yeah.
It was just people partying and being caught on camera doing it.
Yep.
And then it made the movie.
Yeah, an editing disaster for the most part. A lot of people forgot to turn off record. Phones were left in pockets. They were left with thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of just nonsense footage. But really makes it even that much more remarkable because the way the movie plays, it unfurls in such an exciting, really snappy way. Even with thousands of hours of footage, this thing just hits and like escalates like how an out-of-control neighborhood party would.
I also think that in terms of direction, all of these montage scenes really were the iconic parts of this movie. Like the soundtrack's really important. We'll get into that later. Those scenes are what kind of translated to an audience where you get lost in these montages. And so it makes sense that a music video director directed this movie. I think Finding Nima was a really integral part of making this movie what it was.
Well said. Last little notes before we get into our categories. This is only a $12 million budget movie, ends up making over $100 million. So from a financial standpoint, a massive success.
Totally.
And like a fairly low budget movie for the time. I mean, we're off the heels of I Pronounce You Chuck and Larry, and I think that movie cost $85 million to make.
Yes, which we watched and talked about in episode 2.
Yes.
In case you were confused on why he said on the heels of Chuck and Larry, as if that was the last big movie before Project X.
Other interesting notes here. Nima made music videos for Franz Ferdinand, Santa Gold, Chromeo, Mark Ronson, and even Flight of the Conchords.
Wow.
Which is pretty interesting. And all those music videos are really good. The main reason he got used as the director for this movie, though, was an Adidas campaign that was like a house party. And if you watch those Adidas commercials that he directed, they look very similar to Project X. It's almost like they were like, give me that. We want that. And then he was like, okay, I'll do it again.
Yeah, totally.
Overall reception of the movie, not that great. The critic score on Rotten Tomatoes is a 29% and an audience score of about 60%, and Metacritic's like a 48 out of 100.
Yeah, and when it came out, it was trashed by critics for a lot of the things that we'll get into later. It just was like party slop, but also they feared the effect it would have on high school brains.
Yeah, I mean, just picture the old curmudgeon neighbor who doesn't want you to throw a party, and that's essentially how the critics received it. They were like, this is irresponsible.
Yeah.
Kids shouldn't be drinking. It's too loud. I hate EDM. When did you first see this movie?
I didn't see it in theaters, but I did see it right after it came out, and I think I've seen it probably 10 times since then.
Yeah, I saw it right after it came out too. Couldn't get to the theaters and see it, but I watched it like in the basement of a friend's house, and we like stole beers from their dad's garage cooler and like drank a couple brews and watched it, and it was a real one of those.
Also, I will say, in college, I had a project for animation class where I had to take a movie and make a trailer for that movie that changed the genre, and I picked Project X and made a trailer that was a thriller.
Nice.
And so I like know certain scenes of this movie super well because I recontextualized them with like new music, made it scary.
That's
that
awesome.
Sort of thing. I looked for it on my Dropbox. I couldn't find it.
Dang. Got a good grade though? You passed school, buddy?
I think I legitimately got a C+ on that project.
Not
or a
bad.
B-, something like that.
Not bad.
Really bad.
Oh.
For me.
Oh. Okay.
It wasn't good for me.
Early on, I love when Costa's overhearing the cool kids in the locker room talk about the last party that they missed out on. And he turns to his friends and says, man, how'd we miss out on that party? Even Wheelchair Robert got beat off there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You like that one, huh?
I did. I did like that one. Even Wheelchair Robert got beat off. The laziness of high schoolers for the kid in a wheelchair's nickname to be Wheelchair Robert.
Right. Yeah.
Especially coming from Costa's mouth, to sum up just the immaturity of high school at the time. And I'm sure now, I don't think high schoolers now are like, ooh. But yeah, that line was funny to me. And then JB gets a boner shortly after, which is funny too. It's not really a line, it's more of a visual.
One of my favorite things about this movie is that Miles Teller is in it, and he plays Miles Teller. That's his name in the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, but he's not Miles Teller, the actor. He's
No.
Miles Teller, the star baseball player
Yeah.
from their high school, who I believe is graduated now. He's in college. I don't know why he's so famous. There's never a baseball player in my high school that would be treated the way that Miles Teller is in this movie.
He's the man. He pulls up in a party bus later. Like, what kind of D1 baseball player just has access to, like, hella money?
Yeah, I don't really understand it, but it's really funny when they're in the grocery store and they talk to him and he says he's going to a party. He's like, I got plans. And then they say where their party's at, and he's like, that's the one I'm going to.
Yeah.
And then he's like, wow, well, I'll see you guys later, to these, like, nerds, you know? And then Costa, when he's walking away, says, bring your mitt, we'll play catch.
Yeah. And he's like, shut up, you're not doing that.
And he's like, no, thanks.
I also love in that scene when Thomas Mann, the lead and protagonist here, says to Miles Teller, he goes, Mytel, having a little soiree at my place later. Wonder if you want to stop by later or whatever. Yeah. He says soiree, which I'm always fixated on that every time I rewatch this movie, because it's just like the high schoolers like trying to talk to the older guys, trying to like make the party seem like a little cooler, but like not too out of control.
He's just like downplaying it.
Yeah.
I also never picked up that he's calling him Mytel because his name's Miles Teller. I didn't even like pick up on that. That's ridiculous.
At 17, you're not throwing a soiree.
Yeah. I also do genuinely love when JP's in the back of the car and they're driving and he's trying to like teach them how to pleasure a woman via fingering her. But he's like it keeps like cutting from like example to example. He's like this and he's like giving them all these pointers.
Like, this one's the Arabian donut. Yeah. He's got like names for him, and then in like the third example he goes tap 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 tap.
It's ridiculous. That is super funny. But the line that I picked as my favorite is when Costa's talking to Thomas. Thomas is starting to get nervous about the party, about bringing drugs to it, about like inviting too many people, whatever. And Costa turns to him and says, if you fuck this up, I will stab you. Yeah. I'm serious. That's my favorite line in the whole movie.
Yeah, I love that line too. I'm kind of torn between two for my favorite lines. I love when Costa is talking to the police and he's like really giving them a hard time. You got to have a warrant. You can't come in here. Is there an adult here we can speak to? And he says, Well, of course, in my culture, I've been a man since I was 13.
Yeah.
Referring to his bar mitzvah. I also love the Thomas line when he's flipping off the news camera. He says, "Look at me now, bitches. My party is legendary."
Yeah.
It's just like the accumulation of everything. Thomas finally doesn't care that his house is being destroyed. He's just given into the fact that he's throwing the legendary party.
He's already like filmed a video for his parents that's almost like as if he's about to pass away.
Yeah, he's like dead.
Yeah, he's like, if you're seeing this, I'm probably gone by now. But the party got out of control. I'm drunk. That's no excuse. He's like talking to his parents. Then he goes up on the roof and he's like, "My party is legendary." Yeah. That's crazy. The reason I wanted to do this movie is because for some reason, there's a lot of discourse about this movie on the internet right now, either because they kind of pseudo-announced a sequel, Project XX is in pre-production. There's like Patrick CC put out a video about it. And
Great
there's just kind of like a discussion about what this did and like the impact that this movie had and why it was so successful. And so I wanted to rewatch it for that reason, because we've talked about movies that have aged poorly based on dated language and slurs and misogyny and all of these things that we kind of have a new lens on. But this one's interesting because it has some of that, but it also has like the fallout of this movie. Like people trying to replicate it, people losing their lives because they tried to replicate it because of the message that the movie sends. It isn't as like stark as maybe some of the other stuff that we talk about. Like, they use the F slur in this movie. At one point, Costa, who is a white Jewish kid, uses the N-word.
Yes.
There's also this thing of like, these are the nerds and they made this crazy party happen and now they're legends forever and they just get a slap on the wrist even though their whole neighborhood was on fire and the SWAT team got called. Yeah. It's not realistic. The consequences are not nearly what they would be in real life. And a lot of people found that out by throwing crazy parties. And then people, getting shot or getting injured, ODing. There's tons of stories like that. You can watch Patrick CC's video to see more about those things.
The criminal downfall. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we threw a party in high school.
We did, called Project C.
Yeah, and it was legendary. And at a moment during that, can I tell the story?
Yeah, I'll just, some context. It was called Project C because our friend Casey was moving from Ohio to California.
Yeah, shout out Casey Sugarman.
Yep, shout out to Casey. We threw this as like a going away party for him in our friend Matt's backyard.
Built a stage.
His parents were kind of like...
loosey-goosey.
It was like halfway between oblivious and kind of letting it happen. Mm-hmm. We just would always party there.
And so we built a stage, and me and Riley were members in these kind of fictional bands.
They were real.
Okay.
Real
they
bands.
Were very real.
Mm-hmm.
And
great bands.
At one point, someone's mother came to pick them up from the party.
Mm-hmm.
She got a glimpse of this party and liked it so much that once she dropped her daughter off back at home, she came back.
And danced on stage with the bands.
Yeah, started dancing on stage, and we're all like, wait a minute, she's back. She's grooving. This is cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Later, she finds herself in a tent trying to hook up with another party goer.
A friend of ours.
Yeah, and
a legend.
Another mutual of ours goes into the tent while the making out's happening and pulls a knife on the mother and says, "What are you doing? You have a family. Go home." Threatens her to leave with a knife.
Yep.
And that wasn't the highlight or low light of the party. That was just kind of a sidebar.
Yeah, that was like a side story. We had one of our friends who rode a kayak.
Drove it.
Whatever you do. Whatever you do with a kayak. He kayaked to the party via the Maumee River.
Yep. Miles away.
We had another friend wake up on the boat next door in the morning and not know why he got there, how he got there, why he was there. We had another friend make a flamethrower out of an axe can and a lighter on stage.
I remember listening to Satellite of Love by Lou Reed when we woke up the next morning. And then we all drove to Swanton to Mom's restaurant and played basketball.
Yeah, we did.
Someone just fell asleep in their car.
I dyed my hair red for that party and smashed a guitar.
Yep, I played trumpet in a ska band.
It was my band.
Sure.
We weren't a ska band.
Well, I played trumpet.
You played trumpet on Road to Love by Bright Eyes.
True, yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't a ska song.
And that's when I smashed my guitars in an ode to Conor Oberst's performance on Craig Ferguson.
And we are just the lucky ones because other people, like we said, who threw imitation parties had tragedies happen at them.
Oh, 6 people passed away at ours.
Well, that's pretty lucky.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad.
The odd numbers-wise, there were thousands of people there.
Okay, so scenes that age the worst. There are a lot of them. You talked about the multiple slurs and just some of the dialogue choice is very stuck in the times, and I think even for the times was a little like, meh. Just like crude high schoolers, I guess. Which makes it kind of believable, but some of mine that I pulled out that were just the worst. I'll go back to the grocery scene with Miles Teller. Miles Teller says, "Oh, I heard there'd be unlimited high school pussy there." They're not going to say that now.
Shouldn't.
And yeah, you shouldn't. And just the idea that Miles Teller, who's now like Top Gun fame, said that in a movie is pretty outlandish.
My worst, I said it was, the implication is really what makes this one bad. It's just Costa showing nudes of a girl on his phone to his friends and saying, like, this is my girl back in Queens.
Yeah.
I used to hit this all the time, like whatever. It's just like that whole thing in 2012. I feel like there was soon a reckoning about that, about like, you know,
revenge porn type deal.
That exactly, you know.
Yeah, and those shots and just the way women are sexualized as the party continues to progress is something that doesn't age well at all.
Yeah, I wrote this down. I wrote, like, it's uncomfortable because there's a lot of implied high school nudity in this movie and high school sexualization. And I kind of thought of it in comparison to, like, Euphoria, you know?
Yeah, true.
Where Euphoria is obviously, like, this heightened, hypersexual, hyper, like, you know, euphoric drug thing. The dramatization of it in Euphoria is what makes it so nasty.
Yeah.
This does feel like an attempt to capture real life. And I know, like, Seth Rogen's talked about Superbad and talks about the reason that movie worked so well is because it showed really how high schoolers talk. Like, they are that vulgar.
Yeah.
They are that crazy. And I think that is kind of a good thing to show. It's just we're not used to seeing 2012 high schoolers talk that way in a movie.
Yeah.
You know? So
Very
it
true.
felt super gross to watch at certain points.
Yeah. Unlike the scenes that age the worst, I just wanted to shout out one of my favorite scenes when Costa is in the grocery store and he hands the baby a shooter. And it's just holding the little, here you go, little buddy. And he starts crying with the little vodka. Awesome scene. Harmless, hilarious, great scene. The whole grocery store getting things ready is pretty good.
Well, I think we're about to find out.
Absolutely.
They're making Project XX, and I'm curious to see what they do with that, what will have changed in high school culture. My guess would be that there's going to be less implied high school nudity. There's going to be not any, or at least less homophobia.
Yeah.
And probably less direct misogyny. I'm sure there'll be some.
And way more vaping.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
So much vaping.
I didn't even think about
just
that.
Just an incredible amount of vaping. And my main note is just like, if they're going to try and recapture whatever magic there was in the original, it's going to have to remain equally as vulgar, but just be able to adapt slang from today in a non-corny way, because I feel like that's a lot harder to do today than it was in 2012 for whatever reason. Like, slang just moves so much quicker now, and by the time it makes it to like a major movie studio, it's already changed enough, and you end up using it, and it's like, you don't want kids running around in Project XX being like, oh, Britney's got a gat.
Right.
And like, that's going to just age. And the second it hits the screen, it's going to be corny as fuck.
Yep.
And not that the lines in the first one aren't corny, but it's like different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, you know, you don't want the main character going like skibbity toilet, you know, stuff like that. Probably not going to age super well.
By the time you put a TikTok trend on the movie, the trend's over.
Right, totally. Kai Cenat should be in it.
Kai Cenat should be in it. He could be like the cool older guy, maybe. Like, he graduated. He's Miles Teller, essentially. They're like, Kai! Like, he became a streamer.
Yeah, that would be cool. Drewski could be in it, maybe?
Drewski.
Yeah.
The Drew Man.
He should probably play JP. I know he's like 30, but,
yeah,
you know,
whatever. My last note of how it would be different today is, I love when the boys are just chilling in the room mid-party and JP's trying to, like, get them to vibe out, and he puts on R. Kelly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be different. I think it had already happened. I think that was the joke.
Well, not to like he wasn't in federal prison at that point.
R. Kelly's in federal prison?
R. Kelly's getting beat up right now in prison.
I did not know he was in prison.
Are you upset about it?
No.
No, Riley. What the fuck, man?
I gotta do more research. I don't know.
Yeah, you do.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've really hit my last two recasts out of the park. I really struggled with this one because it's good that you don't know him.
Yeah, that's what I put. I put like casting nobodies in this movie was effective. The only non-nobody was Miles Teller, and he wasn't that big yet.
Yeah, it really works well that you don't recognize him, and it does add to the maybe that could be me. Maybe I could be fucking sick one day.
Yeah.
Whatever. Functional recast could be maybe some recognizable sketch comedians, like maybe like a Please Don't Destroy or something. And instead it's like elevated past high school, and maybe they're in like the nerdy theater frat at a college, maybe a liberal arts college or something, and they throw a party that like brings everyone together.
Yeah, I think it would be better if it was like Friday beers.
Yeah.
They're more like party guys. Please Don't Destroy. I can't even imagine them partying.
Oh, I can. Those guys get fucked up.
I doubt it, but I put replace Miles Teller with Bryce Hall.
I literally had the thought during the movie of replacing Miles Teller with Josh Richards, so
yeah,
similar vein there. Mm-hmm. They're homeboys.
This is the first soundtrack section that like really matters.
Yeah.
Of the movies that we've talked about.
Absolutely.
Because this soundtrack made this movie. Like
100%.
The Kid Cudi Pursuit of Happiness remix by Steve Aoki. That was like a huge party song. You couldn't go anywhere without hearing it. Then you have the Heads Will Roll A-Track remix that went triple platinum because of this movie. And then it has a bunch of other ones like My Girls. The My Girls Animal Collective scene is crazy. Like there's 2 Eminem songs. And then also Intro by the XX had a huge moment because it's the outro to this movie, ironically.
Yeah.
It's the outro. Intro's the outro.
Intro's the outro.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
And it's XX, which is Project X. Now it's going to be the sequel, Project XX.
They will probably reprise the tune. They'll have to.
Ooh, I wonder what music they'd pick now.
Yeah, I mean, that is the most effective thing about this whole movie is the soundtrack. Like, it's leagues ahead of any other, like, thing really at play. It really keeps the storyline moving on. At each high point, each little climax, there's just the perfect tune.
Yeah.
And it's almost like that, not almost, but this is when Nima's at his best. It's like, I have a loud fire track, and I know how to create an atmosphere between what's on camera and what people are hearing that is like adds to it, makes it extra exciting.
Yeah, it's like it has like emotional moments that are built into these party songs kind of, so it really feels like, you know, like when they're all on ecstasy, like it feels like that.
Yeah.
And honestly, how the fuck did they get their eyes like that unless they were doing ecstasy? Their eyes, like they might have been doing it.
I think they just gave them contacts.
Their eyelids are like this. It's either that or Klonopin. Like really, like their eyes are straight like this, and they're looking directly at the camera and shit, and then they start talking about how they love each other. I feel like they definitely were on that shit. They were on that shit.
Why are you so hyped about this?
Because that's awesome. I'm sorry, that's awesome. Not like, okay, I'm not saying that you should do drugs. I'm saying if you're going to make a movie where people are on drugs, it's kind of awesome if they are on the drug.
Yeah, I don't think they did X for this movie, man.
It's called Project X, dude. Is that why?
Oh.
Because it's Project Ecstasy?
Oh my God.
I really think it might be, for real.
This is the reason you love this movie so much.
We'll talk about that in a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
Put Locals, Girls Like Us by Underscores in Project XX. That is the perfect song
that's a great idea.
for a party scene. Yeah. And I hope Nima's doing it. And also, we will be in it if you want us to be the YouTubers.
It's definitely going to be nerdy girls throwing the party, though.
Oh, I knew it.
Every remake just gets flipped on its head. The boys
I want
to
be Kirby.
Kirby's like 40 now, bro.
I said I want to be Kirby in the movie. So, like, if it's going to be girls, then I'm like the best friend that's like unsuspectingly hot.
That would really make it a comedy. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I see it now. Yeah, because people would be like, huh? Like everybody in the audience would be like, yeah, that's pretty funny.
They'd be like, oh, like halfway through the movie, they're like, oh, he's kind of handsome. Why is she going after Hunky McHunk?
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And the guys have to be topless to be in the pool.
Naked dudes only. Read the sign, bitch. That's like the captain of the field hockey team yelling that at some Twinkie football player or something.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Really flipped the whole thing on its head, man.
Totally.
Instead of X, it's fucking ketamine.
Oh, yeah, Ket Party?
Everybody gets horsed out.
Do you think it was real booze? Do you think they were drinking?
Quit it, man. People were drinking.
If they were drinking, it was sick.
They were drinking.
What about the nitrous? There's a nitrous scene.
It wasn't helium, I'll tell you that.
I bet it was. Yeah, I bet it was nitrous.
Yeah, probably.
Wow, that's sick. I love show business, man. Let me in. I'm joking. Let me into the movies industry. I'm kidding. I like it here. I like it over here on YouTube.
It's funny that this house that they built to party at was across the street from Murtaugh's house from Lethal Weapon.
Really?
Yeah, because it was at like Silver Productions or whatever, and it was on the back lot of one of the studios. And he did Lethal Weapon 2, 3, and 4. And so it's literally across the street from Detective Murtaugh's house.
Wow, that's funny.
Which is just, that's a peek behind the Hollywood curtain right there for you movie lovers. Detective Murtaugh was actually the annoyed neighbor of Project X.
It's an Easter egg.
Yes, exactly. Wow. An Easter egg.
Last thing about the soundtrack really quick. I love when they're at the scary drug dealer's house and he's listening to You're Beautiful by James Blunt.
Yeah, that is great.
It's so funny.
Good shout out there.
You're beautiful. And he's just like, what's up, Costa? Welcome back.
He's like, all right, let's get this over with. I got to be at the dojo at 5.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Probably not.
I feel like there are more people that haven't seen it than I thought.
Yeah, for
Some
sure.
people, when I mention it to them, like friends of mine, they're like, what is that?
I think there's a small window of time where it was like must see, and then it really did live a life of its own outside of the movie.
It almost has like a cult following in a weird way. I know it's bigger than a cult following movie, but like it almost has like people really look at this movie like they do their cult classic favorites, you know?
Yeah, it's not one of my problems with it, but I just went into this with so much hype from, like, the people that really like this movie really like this movie.
Yeah, me.
Because I feel like it's just so unlike any other movie that there really is no comparison, and that's part of, like, where the love for it comes from, is like, wow, that's just a one-off, good time, no holds bar party movie.
That's weird because it's kind of based on other things. Like, they definitely cast the kids to try to look like the Superbad
for sure.
Cast. Like, it's supposed to be like, you know, The Hangover, but for children or whatever. I just love the idea of it. I don't even really think the execution is like perfect or anything. I don't think like, it's not that I don't have problems with the movie at all. I just think like the idea of like, holy shit, let's film a POV, shaky camera, YouTuber friend version of a party movie and then pass out phones to everybody and then make the soundtrack awesome. Like, it's just awesome that they did it.
It is like really the only entry to the found footage genre that is not horror or thriller.
Yeah.
Because everything else is like that shaky, freaky POV perspective is just an added element to it being creepy or agitating, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And in this, it's just like, oh, that's just everyone's phone footage from a sick party. That's how you would live it, I guess, if you weren't there.
Yeah, which is the reason that I do think it goes over the top at the end. I don't like that it elevates to a place where the cops are all there and their drug dealer in riot gear shows up and starts flame throwing the trees in the neighborhood. It's like, to me, I'm just like, this takes it to a level that would never actually happen. And the rest of it feels like it maybe could.
Yeah, the only reason I tend to like that flamethrower scene at the end is because that is actually when it feels like a movie.
Yeah, but like I don't want this to feel like a movie. I want this to feel like my party. Not actually like now. I'm not saying now, but I'm saying like for the viewer, that's like what I feel like makes it the coolest, is if it feels real.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a hard one for me to like want to recommend to someone. If someone's like, oh, I haven't seen that, would I like it? I don't know. Maybe. It's like I can't point to anything and be like, oh yeah, you're going to love that. Like, it's very...
How do you not love it? It's so watchable.
I don't know.
That's what I will say. Like, just on some normal person shit, it is such a watchable movie. It's so fun. You don't have to overthink it. Even if you don't like the idea that I was talking about, like that's not your favorite part about it. It's got a good soundtrack. The actors do really well, I think. I think Costa is like, although he's a fucking dick in the movie, he plays a dick really well. And I think JP is funny. I think Thomas is funny. I think Kirby's good.
Yeah, to me, it's just like, it is the total lack of depth that makes it not feel like a movie. Like all the characters, like what Superbad and Hangover give you that this movie doesn't is just like arcs and actual backstory to characters. This is just like,
this definitely has that.
I didn't think so.
Costa, he's from Queens. He moved out to LA. He's like not cool at the school anymore. Like he was cool back in Queens, or at least he says he was. You get the idea that he might be lying. He goes to LA, he's friends with the nerds. He wants to make them popular again. He's like a super slick talking, slick dick, smooth criminal. And then JP, obviously like the suave, sophisticated nerd who like already imagines himself as a 30-year-old.
Yeah.
And then you got Thomas. Like, I don't know. It has all of what,
I don't know.
To me, it feels like the characters are real. That is what makes the movie hold together. Otherwise, it falls apart.
Yeah. Upon rewatch, it did not do that for me.
Yeah, I watched it 3 weeks ago with a friend who had never seen it. And I was like, oh, this is good. Rewatching it with you, I was like, this is great. Like, I liked it more on a second rewatch.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I will say.
Yeah. So we're on opposing sides there in the recommending category. Mine's gone down even from what I have written here since we've done this. I'm going to give it 2 stars. And I'm going to say it wasn't funny, but made me want to get drunk.
Okay. I give it 3.5 stars. And my review is gotta try this.
We are really becoming critics, man.
Yeah, totally.
I love it.
Uh-huh.
I really love it.
Yeah. You can follow us both on Letterboxd, by the way. Those are going to be linked in description. If you've seen Project X, what did you think of it? Also, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. I recommend it to you. And if you want to know what movie we're going to do next in this series, join our Patreon. We post about it before the episode comes out so you can watch the movie, the source material, if you will. And then you can watch this movie and know what we're talking about.
It's a movie club.
Yeah, join the movie club. How did it age? Also, if you have a movie that you want us to do, join the Patreon and comment it on one of our posts about this. Because we have some planned, but we would love to throw in ones that you guys really want us to talk about.
For sure.
Other than that, party on.
My party's the shit, bitches.
This has been HiveMind Unlimited. This has been How Did It Age? This has been Project X. And I am Riley.
And this has been Graydon. I'm changing my name legally.
All right, we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.